and re-describe what I've said this morning and talk about how we're going to use that to go after individual kids. Let's take the triangle and turn it upside down to let gravity help us talk about it. Let's put every kid in your school in this green box. That represents your whole school. You've got kids in your whole school that are really successful. You've got kids that are pretty successful, you've got kids that are in the middle, you've got kids with some problems, some big problems, and then you've got you know who. They're all in the green box. As the year goes by and you shake that box, you know some kids are going to fall out. The bigger their problems, the faster they'll fall out. So what we do on the bottom of that box is we build a screen. That screen on the bottom of that green box is what we've been talking about, positive error support. All of us decide, what do we want our kids to do? Teach it to them. Every kid hears the rule. How do we create routines and arrangements in the areas of our school that make our kids be more successful? How do we teach it to all of our kids? How do we remain consistent across all of us? How do we collect data? We do that, and if that screen was doing a good job, we believe 10 or 15% will fall out, and this group right here will be standing on this line. Now what I could do now is I could just stand back and say, I'm going to keep my eye on all these kids, and for the next month I'm just going to watch what happens. And I'll tell you what will happen. These 2 or 3 kids will get a whole bunch of problems, and these ones will get a medium amount. And then I'll say, medium amounts, yellow, whole bunch of them, red. I've found those kids by failures. I'd rather find them by prevention. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to say, of these kids that are standing on that line, what's the simplest thing I could possibly do? So I've got 10 to 15% of my school sitting right here. What's the simplest thing I could do? So earlier we talked about putting a sign on a door. What are other things like that that you could do across your school? So I'm going to talk about, where do you hang reminders hanging from the ceiling that says, remember to do this? Where do you have a flashing light? Where do you use these? When and where are you going to use these things? How many extra things could you put in to make it work? Now yeah, 80 to 90% of you don't need that, but what extra will you need here? If that works, what we've done is we've built a new screen here, and that new screen's kept kids there. It wouldn't let them fail any further. But some kids will fall right through that new screen, and they'll go down to this level. At this level, we've got kids that we can say this about. This kid has not been successful with what we all do in our school to make kids successful. This kid has not been successful with extra things we do. What are we going to do for that kid? At this point, we start looking at individual kids. And you say, well, I put that new thing in place, and these 5 kids still have problems. What could I do even more for them? Well, I'm going to probably look at you individually, and I'm going to say, when does Amy have her problems? Where does she have her problems? What is she doing there? What's going on with her? And then we as a little team that know her, we could say, so you've seen her do it here, and I've seen her do it there, and we've seen this going on. What if we had her come in and check in with us every day right before class, and we'll sign a little sheet saying she'd done. That's what we're going to do for her. Very simple. We'll call that a simple student intervention. Sometimes we call those check-in, check-outs. I had my son do one of these when he was in elementary school, and he kept forgetting his homework. So what I did is I made up a little sheet, and I made him take it. Even in elementary school, going to different teachers, he had to go to each teacher each day and have her sign, no, you do not have homework. Because every day he'd come home and say he did, and the next day he'd say, oh yeah, I forgot, we did, but I didn't. So I made him have a check sheet. That was something that we had to do 2 steps down, just for him. If that doesn't work, we move into more complicated student interventions. This is where we're going to need formalized assessment. This is where you're probably going to have people really just sit and watch that kid and take notes and do different kinds of things. Checklists and assessments and other kinds of tests. And the things we end up with from those are going to be fairly complicated. IEP kind of things. Really detailed, individualized student interventions. They might even include that kid going to different teachers or to seeing different, it could be big. If that doesn't work, we're at the very tip of the triangle now. This is going to be 1 or 2 kids. These kids need a full multidisciplinary team assessment and team-based wraparound. Here's the way I want you to think about this as we talk about it today. As we go down the triangle, It goes to a point, which means fewer and fewer kids. The more successful we are, the fewer kids we have by the end. But think of another triangle on top of that one that's like this. The further down the triangle we go, the more people will be involved, the more time-consuming it will be, the more complex it will be, the more challenging it will be. So we don't want to go down this triangle. We don't want to be here. Number one, we are not very good at fixing these kids, but number two, it's really time-consuming and ugly. We would rather fix things up here. So we're constantly thinking, how do we prevent the next set of problems? Rather than saying, how do we respond to the next set of problems, which is also something we consider. So here's what I want to do for the rest of the day. I want to talk about this level, verging into this level a little bit. So let's say you've got a kid in your school who doesn't seem to respond to all the things that you do across the school. Your data says, here's a kid that still has problems. So you try something pretty simple. It wasn't enough. You know, a lot of times I see the teachers say, well, we'll put assertive discipline in the classroom. I'm going to start writing the kid's name on the board, putting a check by it. It has no effect at all on the kid. Now what do? Well, I think now we're at this level, which is we're not just going to do something for everybody. Let's talk about this kid. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the people together who know the kid. So the things we're going to be doing today are team-based, and I'm going to have you breaking up into little teams and doing some things. Who should be on the team? People who know the kid. If you're the kid's teacher, if a kid has you for any class, then you should come in and sit there and say, here's what I know. Parent should be there to say, here's what I know. I think if the kid's old enough, the kid could be a part of this too. I think your team has to decide whether you think that's appropriate or not. It's certainly not inappropriate to have a kid there unless you believe that they're just not going to be able to understand what it is you're trying to do. So here's the way we're going to approach it. We're going to approach it as, at this level, what we have to figure out is what's going on for that kid. So from this point forward, we're going to be concerned with why kids do what they do. What they do really isn't as important at this level as why they do it. If I say I'm going to do something for kids that scream, whatever intervention I choose will only be effective if it matches why they're screaming. If they're screaming to get me to go away, then me putting them in timeout will make screaming get worse. If they're screaming to get my attention, then me coming over there and having a lecture on them is going to make it worse. So I need to know why they're doing it before I decide what I'm going to do about it. That's what our issue will be here first. So, why do people behave? Okay, one possibility would be that it pleases others. Let me just give you an example. You come down the hallway after lunch to your classroom. You're walking down the hall, you turn the corner into your classroom, and there behind your desk is a student standing on your chair. So you say, why are you on my chair? And what do they say to you? It's fun, I don't know. So then we start thinking, that's weird. And then generally speaking, people will come up with one of four possibilities. One, it's modeling. That kid's seen someone else do it. It's those bad kids that have taught this kid how. Okay, so then I think, no, nobody else stands on chairs, so modeling can't be it. What else do we have? It was an accident. He was running through the room and he just landed on my chair standing somehow. I don't know how that happened. And that doesn't sound very logical either. It couldn't be an accident. Must be an instinct. Maybe a mouse came through the room and he jumped to avoid the mouse and landed on the chair. There are no mice in this room though, so that doesn't make sense. And this is generally where people end up. Well, it wasn't modeling, it wasn't an accident, it wasn't an instinct. That kid's got ADHD. That's the problem. That's what it's got to be. And so then we all run off with ADHD. Well, it's possible that kid's got ADHD, but what I think people have missed in here is another reason that's a little bit more generic. If a kid does it one time, it's not a problem. I mean, if I said to you, did your kid ever stand on their chair? And you said, yeah, he did once. And I said, what'd you do? And you'd say, I told him don't. Did it ever happen again? No. Then you're not going to say, well, that's a problem. You're going to say, it's not a problem. I told him not to. He never did it. It's a problem when it happens over and over and over again. Too many times I go to these meetings to hear people talk about something that happened once. That's not a problem. It might be weird, but kids do weird things. And they don't always know why. It's a problem if they keep doing it. If they keep doing it, it's for one reason. It works. Our job is to figure out how it works. Why are they doing that? Well, if they did it once, we'll never know. But if they do it a bunch of times, we can try to figure it out. What are they getting out of that? What's in it for them? Why would they want to keep doing that same thing? Are they getting something they like? Are they getting away from something they don't like? They getting people to pay attention to them? They getting out of work? What's going on? So we have to figure that out. So here's a typical function. This caption says, the class was quietly doing its lesson when Russell, suffering from problems at home, prepared to employ an attention-getting device. Now the caption tells us pretty much what the function is. The function is get attention. Now what if Russell did this just once? He walks into the classroom, and there in the classroom is this contraption, and he touches it and it goes off. Would you say, boy, that Russell loves attention? I might say, well, maybe it was an accident. Maybe it was modeling. Maybe, I don't know why he did it. But here's what I would do if I'm the teacher. Russell, please don't touch that. Now, if Russell never touches it again, is that a problem behavior? No. It's like a little kid touching a stove. They touch the stove, they burn their hand, they don't touch it again. It's not a problem behavior. But if you've got a kid that goes over and touches it and burns their hand every day, that's a problem. So what I want to know is, well, how often has he done this? And what's going on around it when he does this? Are other people telling him, saying, go do it? Or does he trip and fall and land on it and that sets it off? Or what are people doing when he does make that happen? Are they giving him attention? Are they laughing at him? Are they coming over and talking to him? Are they throwing stuff at him? Are they leaving him alone? I've got a lot of questions. If this has happened over and over again, the people that are sitting around that table can tell me, well, this is what I've seen. And by listening to everybody talk, we're going to figure it out. If we don't figure it out, it's more complicated. But let's assume we can figure it out. We call this functional behavior assessment, which isn't important for you to know. But really what we're trying to do is figure out how does behavior and environment interact. Because if we know that they interact, then we can start changing the environment to change behavior. In other words, if I know that every time a substitute comes, you're going to do these behaviors and the substitute's going to yell and the rest of the kids are going to laugh, then I know what to do to change things. I need to change the way we structure things when there's a substitute. Not all the time, when there's a substitute. So I need to know what my conditions are that I need to change and how I need to change them. So what we're going to do is figure out how to do that. Now here's the way I was taught to do functional behavior assessment. I will come to your school, you will tell me you have a child who needs a lot of attention. And you will say to me, please go watch this kid. They take me down to your classroom, they open the door and say, here's the guy from the university that's certified, and you say, oh yeah, and all the kids are staring at me. And you say to the kids, pay no attention to that man, he's just here for no reason. And then you say, by the way, this is the kid right over here. All the kids know who I am. They all know why I'm there. In fact, oftentimes the kid would say, you're here today to watch me, aren't you? So the day will I watch this kid all day long, he is an angel. He is opening doors for people and no ma'am and helping his peers and sweeping up. And what kind of an assessment have I been able to do today? I have wasted my time. So if someone were to say to me, what are that kid's problems? I would say, he doesn't have any. But I'm wrong. Who does know what that kid's problems are? The teacher who's seen them every day. How much sense does it make that I would go in and in a day or less tell you everything that would ever be known about a kid that you've been with every day for a year? There's no logic to that at all. And some people think they're magic and can do that, but they're not. There aren't any people that just have this magic thing. Here's what I figured out. If I go in and watch a kid for 15 minutes, and that kid has a major problem behavior every single day. Let's say that major problem behavior lasts for a full minute, 60 seconds. And that behavior consists of blood being spilled and sirens going off and smoke and fire and broken glass and blood-curdling screams, and it's horrible for 60 seconds. Then it's over. If I go in and watch for 15 minutes at some point during the day, the probability of me seeing that behavior is less than 4%. If I go in and watch for 3 hours, the probability of me seeing that behavior is 43%. Given or assuming that that kid isn't going to react differently just because I'm there. If I just want a 50-50 shot at seeing that kid, I've got to be there for 3.5 hours. And if I want to see 3 examples of the behavior, which is what we normally want to see, that means I've got to be there on the average of 6 times for 3.5 hours each. I can't do that. It's starting not to even be logical, but it's definitely not realistic. But it's really not logical when you think about it like this. We have a group of teachers in the school that have seen this behavior every time it's ever happened. Why don't we just ask them the questions that I came to answer? Why don't we just say to them, so what was going on when he did that? So what happened afterwards? So what were the other kids doing? Why do I have to see it firsthand when everybody else has seen it 1,000 times? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to play with a case study today of a child named Eric. And in this case study, we have 6 people that are going to be part of the team. These people are on the team for one reason. They know Eric. So we've got his classroom teacher, the PE teacher, the principal, the parent, the counselor, and the librarian. None of these people are behavior analysts. They are people who know Eric. Here's what we know about this setup. Research that we've done in about the last 3 years has really led us to believe this. If you're going to make this work, 3 things have to be there. 1, we have to involve people who know the kid. 2, one person on this team has to understand what function means so they can help take everybody's stories and turn them into something. And 3, it's good if we have a protocol, a piece of paper or something that leads us through what we're going to do. Now, did I give them a piece of paper that does that? Yes. I've given you something called the team meeting record. Here's what that is. This is not an FBA. This is not a formal form. This is a set of reminders. You don't have to use this form to do what I'm going to do today. But this form is something that I'm giving you as a set of prompts to help you remember kind of the way we've gone through it. I believe that we can do the full assessment of why this kid is doing it, develop an intervention plan and a measurement system, agree on it, put it in place, and be out of here in 45 minutes or less. We've been doing this in schools all over the US and Canada, and we've got the data. We can do it that fast. If one person on that team gets it, the people that we're talking to know the kid, and we've got some protocol to make it go so we don't have people wandering off talking about things that are irrelevant. We went out and we timed schools around Florida doing team meetings on kids with problem behaviors. They last forever, and the majority of the time is spent on things that are not very productive. We found that at least a half hour was spent trying to figure out what the kid does. Because we'd ask questions, what's going on? And the answer would be, this kid's a jerk. Okay, well, exactly what's he do? Jerk stuff. Okay, what does that look like? Oh, he's lazy. Okay, none of these are behaviors. So if we're going to say why'd they do it, we don't know what we're talking about. So we've got to get people to focus on behavior and not personalities. The second thing that people do is they'll spend an hour brainstorming possible punishments, just like my students did. So what would you do for this kid? We could suspend him. What if that doesn't work? We'll suspend him for 2 days. What if that doesn't work? Let's expel him. Okay, those aren't really the kinds of things we want to talk about. We want to talk about teaching, prevention, setting up plans that make it not happen, routines, arrangements, reinforcement, and yeah, punishment. But when you say, okay, and our punishment is suspension, and that's the first thing you use, to me that's the same as saying, and our reinforcer is $25 every time they do it right. You don't want to go there. Stick with teaching kind of reinforcement and punishment. Don't go to the other stuff yet. So these people are going to get together, and I'm going to show you them dealing with this case. In between showing them dealing with this case, I've got some other cases that I'm going to show you that I'm going to let you be the team for. So I'm going to set you up in little teams, and I'm going to have you discuss the kids that we're talking about, and I'm going to give you some information to discuss. So here's the way we started out. On the first page, we need to write down who's there and the team people. This doesn't have parents' name on it. It should, because parents are part of this too. We have 6 people total. Now, if I'm the PE teacher, I might say, why do I have to go to a behavior meeting? I don't do behavior. How do we answer that person? Why are they there? Because you know Eric. That's it. That's the extent of it. But here's what I like to do with the people in the school. Before we get the school year going, I tell them this ahead of time. And I've been using this. This is a bookmark that I made up, and we printed off and gave them to all the people in the school. And we said, if you are ever asked to come to a behavior meeting, we know you're not a behavior person, but here's what we'd like you to be thinking. Walk into that meeting with answers to these questions the best you can. 1, what exactly is that kid doing that you've noticed? So tell us about behavior. 2, if you had to take a wild guess as to why that kid is doing that, what would you guess? 3, if this was working well in your classroom, what would that kid be doing right now? What would you like him to do? 4, if I told you I'd give you $1 million if he did that tomorrow, what would you do? And you can't split the money with him. What would you do to set up an environment? You know, think about it like that. If I said to you, if that kid doesn't go through that door tomorrow, I'll give you $1,000, what would you do? You would stand guard in front of this door for tomorrow. So what we want to be thinking about is, what's the simplest thing I could possibly do to make that kid do what I want him to do? And 5, if we come back and talk about this in a month, what could I have been looking at or calculating during that month so we could come back and compare and say, is it working or not working? So let's just go through those 5 steps and look at what the team does in each step. So here's number 1. What's the problem? So let's get this team together, and the team is going to be discussing right now what the problem is. Let me give you some caveats about all of the videos I'm going to show you today. 1, not all, but the vast majority of them are actors. So these are not very professional. We got together, put these things together. So using the word actors is probably not real accurate either. Please focus on content and outcome, and don't critique the acting, because if you critique the acting, you'll never get to the content and the outcome. We're not professionals. We're just a bunch of people doing this. Second, these are made on kids that I've really dealt with and cases I've really had. So I've tried to make them look as real as possible. They are a little simple at some points, and we're going to get to harder ones as we go. But I want you to realize that there are some that are simple and there are some that are hard. But these ones are all pretend. So no teachers were hurt during the filming of any of these episodes. Last thing, I have written the scripts for all of these ones with actors to make it sometimes difficult. So at times some of these people are going to say things that are just like getting in the way. Sometimes people are just trying to, we should just get over this meeting, we don't need to do that part. Or let's just talk about punishment, that's all we need to do. And I've done that on purpose to show you how we deal with that. The way to deal with that is not to argue with those people. That's why I like to have the form. Because when someone says, we need to talk about punishment, I like to say, we will. It's back here on page 8. Right now we need to get this part done. And that keeps us on task. Again, we found that using that protocol keeps us on task. And I want, as a teacher and even now, I consider anything with a meeting to be something I'm against. So if I've got to go to one of these, I want it to get in and out as quickly as possible. That form is supposed to make this happen quickly. That's why we're using it. Don't let people ramble off telling stories that are irrelevant. Save that for the pub after work or something. Okay, so here's the first video.
Hey, we're here today to talk about this functional assessment intervention team meeting records for Eric. What we want to do is try to figure out what his problems are and what we might be able to do to help him. So to start with, Mrs. Smith, can you tell us more about the problems you're seeing? What kinds of noises? How long has it been going on? Anything else you can do to help us?
Well, Eric is a good kid, and I do really enjoy having him in my classroom. But for the last few weeks, his noises have been just out of control. Seems like every 5 minutes I'm dealing with his noises and ignoring the rest of my class and what I'm doing.
What are we talking about here? Give me an example of what you mean by noises.
He's got a million of them. He hums, drums, taps, honks, squeaks, you name it.
That sounds like Tourette syndrome. Maybe we should just refer this case to a medical doctor.
Well, you're right. We certainly can't rule out Tourette's at this point, but I think if we look at the forms, what we're supposed to be doing is just trying to figure out if maybe there's a simpler explanation, and then if there's not, we can always refer him on to more assessment after that.
Well, I know Eric pretty well, but I've never done any kind of assessment on him, so I don't know how I can really help here.
Well, really all we're supposed to be doing, if you look at page 2, is just figure out what kinds of things happen right before and right after he has a problem, what kinds of things happen right before and right after when he's not having problems, and then put it together and see if we can figure out why he's having these problems and what we can do to help.
Okay, then when are these noises most likely to occur?
Exactly, that's what we need to figure out. So is it a student? Is it a particular subject? What kinds of things tend to happen right before he has his problems?
Well, I've never really seen his behavior at home.
In the classroom, he has just as much trouble during math or reading as he does at any other time, but the other children just go on about their business.
Well, in PE we stay pretty active, so I wouldn't necessarily notice any noises. But I can't say that Eric looks any different from any other kid that I have. I mean, he does yell out to me when he needs something, but I don't see it as a problem. I mean, I don't know if this is kind of what you're seeing.
Well, if I'm looking right at him or we aren't in a quiet work time, then I don't see them either. But just this morning I can think of 3 examples of when I had to get after him for noises.
Okay, so what the team has been able to figure out right now is that they're dealing with noises, disruptive noises. We don't really know exactly what those are yet. We've heard a description. She's going to tell us now exactly. Well, I'll tell you, I'll give you some examples. That's what we want. Give us an example. Tell us exactly what's been going on. So what we want then is for her to tell us these. So here's what she's going to do. She's going to tell us stories. Hopefully controlled stories. We don't need a whole bunch of backstory on it. We just want to know what was going on in your class, what did he do, what happened. So make it succinct like that. So here are 3 examples.
You need to sit here quietly and do your work.
What time do I go to speech today?
Not until 2:30.
I don't get this one.
You need to sit there and be quiet and pay attention.
I really need to use a bathroom.
Get the hall pass and go.
Okay, so we could look at our form right now and say, we know this. He makes frequent noises in the classroom that are annoying and disruptive to class learning time. That's why we're here. So we've already done step one, which was, what's the problem? Now noises by itself doesn't tell us a bunch, but we just saw what noises means, or we heard. You saw because you have vivid imagination. She was just telling us what those things were. So now we know what it is we're here to talk about. So the next question becomes, well, why would he make those noises? What's in it for him? Well, why would he want to keep doing that all the time? You probably can already answer this question. You start thinking back and saying, what was going on in every condition where we saw Eric having that problem? Independent work time. And what else was going on during independent work time? Teacher was attending to another student or to the board or to something else. So we know that this is probably going to happen if you've got a time when he's supposed to be doing stuff by himself quietly and the teacher's doing something else. That's when our probable time is. Then he makes noises. What happens after he makes a noise? Gets a lot of the teacher's attention. So I'm going to look at this and right off the bat say, you know what I think's going on here? This kid's doing this to get the teacher's attention. So then why does he keep doing it? It works. It keeps working. So I've got to think realistically, if I'm Eric and I like teacher attention, and I've got this noise-making thing I do that works really well, why would I not do it? I mean, why would I not? I guess you could say because the teacher asked him not to. Yeah, but she can say whatever, but it still works. I mean, she comes over to me and says, don't do that while she's answering my question. So I still get exactly what I want. That's why I'm going to keep doing it. So then what we want to do is, we want to figure out how this whole pathway fits together. This is the entire plan that we're going to do. I want to know this. Under what conditions would we expect to see this? And you already answered this for me. We would expect to see it during quiet work time. What exactly is it that happens during quiet work time that sets this up? So it's quiet work. Let's say this is a road. And here I am, I'm Eric, I'm coming down the road. And I go, hey, it's quiet work time. I need the teacher. What's the next thing that I run over? Teacher's not, I can't see the teacher's eyes. She's not looking at me. She's doing something else. What do I do? Well, here's a fork in the road. I like the left-hand fork myself. So I steer up here and I, yoo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. I bang on things, I make noises, I disrupt, I tip over a desk, I do something. And what is the result of that? I drive right down into Reinforcementville. I get lots of teacher attention. So my question is, if that works, why would he do something different? Because I know what you're all thinking. What would you like him to do when he wants your attention? Raise your hand. So why don't we just do this? Eric, from now on, when you need something from me, raise your hand. Well, he'd go, raise my hand. God, I never thought of that. Good idea. I think we can make the assumption that that has been said many, many times already. So why isn't he doing it? It certainly doesn't work as well as noise making if it works at all. Because think about it. You want my attention. You really want it bad, and I'm looking the other way. You could sit here and wait for me to turn around, or you could yell at me. Which one's going to work better? What's the consequence for raising your hand? Eventual attention. What's the consequence for making a noise? So what's the contest here? You give me two behaviors, one that's easier than the other, and the easy one gets attention a lot faster than the other. Why would I ever raise my hand? Ever. You've given me no reason whatsoever to raise it. So well, I'm going to start getting mad at you when you do that. So when you do that, I'll come over and start telling you, you're still giving me attention. Any attention's good for me. Good attention, bad attention. As long as it's attention, it works. What really happens in the human brain is you build habits. Something signals you to do something. Here's the signal. When the signal happens, you do this. And as your brain does that over and over and over and over and over, it builds a pathway. It'll actually takes this stuff called myelin and wraps that pathway up and makes it better, makes it a freeway. So now here's Eric. He's got a freeway in his brain that leads directly to reinforcement town. And we're saying, what we'd like you to do, Eric, is take this detour where you have to go on this bumpy road and around all these corners and get out and push your car part of the way, and you'll end up there too. And he's going to say, why? Why would I take the detour when the freeway is working perfectly well? So then what do we have to do? We have to change the road. So here's what we're going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some signs. Detour ahead. Reminders. Something's coming, and when it comes, you're going to need to do this. So I put in this sign right here that says, it's now quiet work time. If you need anything, raise your hand. And he comes flying down the road and he sees that sign. Raise my hand. Why would I go there? He's not going to pay any attention to that sign. But I'm going to keep it there because we're going to need it. I might put some signs all the way back here saying, raising hand ahead. Good idea to raise your hand. But he's still going to come flying down this road and go that way. So here's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to put a sign right here that says, bridge out ahead. The bridge up to problem behavior, it's okay, but if you do problem behavior, we've blown this bridge up. How would you blow this bridge up? Not giving him attention when he makes a noise. So he's going to make a noise, get our attention. Not anymore, we've blown this bridge up. But Eric is a little smarter than us. What's he going to do? He's going to rev up his engine, and he's going to get a running start, and we're going to say, it's not going to work, it's not going to work, and he'll say, we'll just see about that. And he's going to make the loudest, longest, most obnoxious noise you've ever heard. Now here's the key. Will it work? If it works, what we've just done is we've just taught him, don't listen to us. We don't mean what we say. But how can you ignore that behavior? If you can't, then that was the wrong way of blowing up that bridge. What we might do instead of blowing up that bridge is we might take this arrow and twist it in another direction where it ends up on Punishment Town instead of Reinforcementville. So yeah, rev up your engine, go flying through here, but when you come down off the bridge, instead of being here where you want, you're going to be in No Recess Todayville. So now Eric's got to think, well, I don't believe that'll work either. I'll just talk my way out of it. So he'll rev up his engine, we'll say, go this way, and he won't. He'll come flying through here, and he'll land on the wrong thing, and then he's got to do it a couple times. He's going to try us. He's going to test us out. They won't do this. A couple times going through there, then he's got to start thinking, gee, you know, maybe going that other route actually is a better way to try it. So how do we get him to go on this route? Again, that big sign right here that says, it's got to catch his attention. You know, free beer, next exit. It's got to be something that he sees and says, well, that's worth a try. A free beer is worth, he's coming down, so he's like, I'm going to step on the gas and try that again. But free beer, well, I better try this one just once. What is that free beer? That's us going over there and giving him double attention for raising his hand. It's us running over there when he raises it. Yes, Eric, thanks for raising your hand. What can I do for you? Here's some extra tickets. Here's something we make a big deal. Well, we can't give him free beer forever. But that was there just to get him started. What we want is he takes our exit, and what's the main thing he has to get? Attention. Then he's got to think, you know, after I've been looking at these things, this exit here seems to work pretty well. Maybe that is worth trying. And once you get him to start doing this one and it works, every time he does this and it works is another success, which builds up that success to failure ratio, which makes this start sticking. And once it starts sticking, the myelin starts wrapping this one up. That's learning. We're creating little nerve pathways that your brain wants to take. That's all learning is. Functional assessment is simply this. We're trying to figure out what to say and what to teach to make it go the way we want it to go. We could do simply as do this with 2 + 2 and the right answer. 5 and 4. Except the function there is a lot simpler to deal with because we're just not going to let him get the right answer. Every time he says this, we'll say no. So it's a lot easier to change. The problem with the behavior one is he's found a way to get the right answer even when he says the wrong answer. So everything we do with all of the little intervention plans that we're going to build today are based on two places: teaching, reinforcement and punishment. Teaching and feedback. So feedback, I think, is part of instruction. You got to put the two things together. So we've got to figure out what are we going to do to make him want to do it? What are we going to do to make him not want to do it? What do we do to make him not want to go that way? And what do we do to make him want to go this way? That's intervention planning. That's the whole thing right there. So let's take a look at what we might have just filled out for Eric. Teacher's working with a student. He's humming. So the teacher attends to Eric, answers a question. Teacher's moving about the room. Eric makes these noises. Teacher comes over and helps him with a task. Teacher's working at the board. He's pounding on his desk. This happens. If we kept asking people, the librarian could tell us, I've seen the same thing in the library. We have independent reading time and he just yells across the room when he wants something. And I go over there and ask him what he wants. Do you ever see him raise his hand? Is a great question we should be asking. Can he do the right thing? And we go, oh yeah, he can. In fact, the classroom teacher says, if we're having a class discussion and I'm facing the group and I ask him to raise their hands, he'll raise his hand every time. Why would he raise his hand there but not in the other circumstance? Right. She's looking right at him. He's already got the attention, so it's very efficient to do it in that situation. And the librarian says during cooperative work groups, he doesn't have any problem working with the other kids. So what we want to figure out then is that what we think happened. We think that during independent work times, that's our antecedent, we'll get disruptive noises. That's our behavior. Why? Because it works to get the teacher to come over and meet his needs. So we could put a functional statement, testable explanation, hypothesis here by just chunking in those three pieces. During independent work times in the classroom and when the teacher's not attending directly to Eric, he engages in noise making to access the teacher's attention to meet his request. Now we know function. That was functional assessment. But a functional assessment's not done until we also do an intervention. Before we move on to intervention though, I want to give you a chance to look at a kid and see what you can think. This kid's name is Sarah. We'll get started on Sarah, looking at her. I'll have you think about it during lunch, and then after lunch I'm going to have you get in teams and brainstorm some of this. But what I want you to know is what's going on with Sarah. So Sarah is in high school. Sarah doesn't have a lot of friends, but she does have some friends. She's been at this school for only a few months, and she's had a lot of problems with a lot of different teachers. She is described as being kind of obnoxious, defiant, sometimes even threatening, verbally abusive. She seems to be capable of doing the work, but doesn't do the work. This is what the people are telling us. So again, you're imagining these three stories that you're going to see.
Sarah, would you please have a seat? I'm not doing any of this crap today.
Then you won't get a grade for today.
I want you to have a seat. I heard what you said.
Students, open your books to page 257, please.
Okay, so in your brain you should be thinking, what was going on right there? There was kind of a class situation getting ready to happen. Something was getting ready to be academic, and the teacher made a statement to this kid, would you please join us? What was the behavior that you saw? What do you want to call that? Jerk won't work. So we got defiance. I'm sorry, what'd you say? Non-compliant, rude, defiance. Yeah, there's a lot of words that work there. So okay. And then what was the outcome? Okay, in that particular case that we just saw, after the problem behavior, the teacher kind of removed the request. Let's see if that is just a one-time thing or if that's kind of what we see happening over and over.
Folks, I need you to turn in your homework. Sarah, did you do your homework?
No, did you?
If you didn't do it, then I'll need you to do it now.
I need you to get away from me.
Did you turn in your homework? And you got yours in? Good. Good job. Good. Sarah, you might want to check your answers.
I don't need your help. Go away.
Well, it looks like you might need to check those because 2 of them are not correct.
Well, it looks to me like blah, blah, blah.
Good.
Okay, so Sarah's a little more challenging than Eric. And what we're going to have to figure out is, when exactly is it that she's likely to do this? Now, all you've heard me tell are 3 stories. That's not enough for you to know exactly when this is going to happen. You could say, this happens whenever anyone opens their mouth around her. This happens whenever, we don't know how detailed, so you're going to have to ask some questions. So what we're going to do after lunch is, you are going to ask me questions. I'm going to pretend like I'm the teacher. Your job is to ask me questions to figure out what the function is. Keep your questions focused on what is the function. So if you're asking me questions about how many siblings does she have and was she a difficult birth and stuff like that, may be interesting, but it won't help you figure out what function is. So I want you to think, I need to know exactly when this is going to happen. So what other questions do I need to ask? I need to know exactly what happens afterwards. So was it the same thing we just saw, or does it ever happen different? You're going to have to ask all those things. So after lunch, I'm going to have you guys break up into little groups, and I'm going to have you brainstorm the questions you want to ask. I'm going to let you ask me, and then from my answers, we're going to see what kind of explanations you end up developing from that. And our end result will be to fill out the front part of this so that we can develop an intervention for Sarah later this afternoon. So I believe it is lunchtime. We'll break here. We'll come back in about a half an hour. Okay. Okay. You're going to start off. Now, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. What I'd like you to do is to get together. I don't care if you get together in 2s or 3s or 5s or whatever you want. I'd like you to just get together with people around you. I'd like you to discuss, remember Sarah, what are some of the questions that you would ask of that teacher? Now, as the teacher, I'll also answer questions from anybody else that would be sitting on that team. So if you want to ask, does she do it the same way in all of your classes, I can answer that for you. So I want you to think out for 5 minutes, what are the questions that you would need to ask in order to develop that hypothesis so you'd know exactly what was going on? So take 5 minutes and discuss, and then I'll play the role of the teacher and let you question me. Okay, I'm putting myself in the shoes of the teacher. So when you ask me questions, I'm going to be the teacher when I answer you. So let's just start out. Who has a question for me? Yes.
Does Sarah do homework in any class in any subject?
Does Sarah do homework in any class in any subject? Not really.
How is she with other teachers?
Around the table, she has the same basic set of problems with all the teachers except for one. A guy named Mr. Smith, or Mr. Jones, was it, something like that. He runs the study hall, and she has study hall last period of the day, and she kind of goes in there and just hangs out, and he says he's never seen any problems with her. Everybody else has.
Does he request for her to do things?
No.
Follow directions that are presented to the whole group, or is she just defiant of directions given directly to her?
Both. She really doesn't respond to directions that I give her in any context.
What is she good at and what does she enjoy?
I don't know. I think she just enjoys doing nothing.
Does she participate in group work?
It depends on who the peers are. If the peers are people she likes, then she might.
What consequences have been tried so far?
Well, I tried sending her to the office, and I tried confronting her and saying, yes, you will do this, and neither one changed behavior. The principal told me to stop sending her to the office, so right now the consequence is she's getting an F.
What have you done that's made her face light up or where she's...
Nothing.
Could you repeat the question, please?
What have you done that's made her face light up?
I haven't seen her face light up ever.
Have you tried having a personal conflict with her?
Yeah, she doesn't really like me. I don't care that much for her. We don't, no.
Is she capable of the work assignment?
She's capable of doing the work, yes. Because once in a while we'll do something and she'll demonstrate she can do it. And so I have seen her do it. She's not the most fluent with it of anybody, but she is capable. Her not doing the homework and not doing the work in class is just, she just doesn't want to.
Those times when she does do it well, then what sort of things?
Well, same as I expect that. You do your work, you get a grade.
Have you had any communications with her parents?
We've not been able to get a hold of her parents at all since she's been here.
Are the teachers she's having trouble with male, female? Or?
It's a mix, male and female. Doesn't seem to make a difference.
You said that she will work with the group if she likes the people in the group. Do you see her face light up in that group?
I don't know if I've ever seen her face light up under any circumstances.
How do you know that she likes those peers?
I don't. All I know is that some people around this table are saying that they've seen her work with peers in the group and do okay with it. In my class, no, I haven't seen her do that in my class, but it has happened.
When she's done her homework, what exactly is it that she's doing?
When she has done her homework?
When she brought in, because I thought I heard you say that she's done.
We generally have, you need to get some problems finished, and bring them back tomorrow at the start of class. So you could do those during your study hall period at the end of the day, or take them home and do them. She chooses not to do either most of the time. Once in a while, she has shown up with some of those problems done. I can't really point to any pattern or what's different about the day she does or doesn't, so I don't know.
And do you know about the previous school that she's attended and her grades were?
We haven't been able to access her records from her previous school yet. I really don't know anything about the home.
What steps are you taking?
I'm asking you guys to tell me what to do. That's my step. Like I said, she says no, I say yes you will. She throws a big tantrum at me, I send her to the principal. The principal says stop sending her down here. My solution is I tell her what to do. She doesn't do it, she gets an F. And that's the consequence. So, if there's something better, I'm asking you guys, but I'm out of things to try.
What if you're making a request or engaging with her, not asking her to perform a task? What if you ask her, how are you?
Oh, if I don't ask her to do something related to academics, then it's not a problem. I mean, if I said, would you run this to the office for me, she would. If I said, would you do, it's when I say something that's focused on joining us or doing something with the work that she gets like this.
After you've asked her to do something and then she ignores you and you go on with the rest of the class, what does she do?
Hangs out, doodles on things, plays with stuff.
So she doesn't continue to badger?
Oh, no. No, once I leave her alone, she stops immediately.
Have you given her choices as far as like which problems or what assignments or?
Is that the kind of thing you do in your room? Maybe we should look at transferring Sarah to you, because it sounds like you've got this down really well. No, I don't, there is no choice. We're doing work.
On the days that she did turn in her homework, what reinforcements did she get at that point?
She didn't get an F on that particular day.
Is she chronically absent or truant, or does she come to school every day?
No, darn the luck, she's there every day. Okay, let's stop there. You guys did a really good job of asking the right questions. I try to be obnoxious, and you guys didn't get hostile with me, which is very good. Did you?
I wanted to know if we were behaving.
Oh, okay. But you didn't ask that, so good. See, the thing is, I was purposefully being obnoxious. The thing is, if you've got me there, you've got your one opportunity to try to give me something. And if you start, and your question was put very well. I was just being obnoxious back to you. But sometimes people say, well, why don't you try this? It's obvious. How come you're not? And what happens when you start yelling at that person in the group is they're thinking, well, this is the last time I ask anybody else for help. I can ignore this kid forever and give him Fs. I feel like we've got this person in there. What I will do if I want to make a statement is I'll first validate them. Oh yeah, either I know Sarah or I've known kids like Sarah and they're a challenge. You really have your hands full with her. I don't envy you. I really am, it's really a great thing that you brought her to our attention because a lot of people would have just ignored it. What I've tried a couple times with kids like that is this or this or this, and those are things you could try. We can just see, but I'm going to be very careful with how I present that. And nobody here, generally when we get like this and I start being obnoxious, people start attacking me. And nobody did that. And that really is the piece that will scare that person from ever asking you again. And I feel like we've got a committee together. Let's try to keep it productive. So let's see what we have here now based upon the questions I answered. I answered for you. Under what basic conditions would you expect to see this? Anywhere in the school? An academic classroom, very good. So when we're in an academic classroom and we make a request, any request? We make a request about being involved with academics. We get defiance, rudeness, etc., etc. And what's she getting out of this? Okay, so it's like this. Here's this big heavy thing. Here, Sarah, hold this. And Sarah says, no, I'm not going to do this, and I'm rude and I'm defiant. And then as a teacher, basically I say, well, I'm going to give this big heavy thing to you. You hold it. So why does she keep doing it? It works. It works for her to escape or avoid. What do you think she's avoiding? It looks like academic work because that's only when it happens. It doesn't seem to happen under any other circumstances other than when we say, please be involved with us in some way with this academics. So I think she's trying to avoid academics. Now the question was asked, and this is a great question, can she do it? And we've answered yes. I'm not completely convinced of what she can and can't do. Even though I might have seen her do it once or twice, maybe that was time when somebody else did it for her, or she copied, or I've really never sat with her and said, show me. Probably the reason I won't is because she'll get really rude and nasty with me, but I really want to know, first question, what is her academic status within each of the courses where we're asking her to do something? And we need some specific information. The hard part, of course, is